YouTube community. Today I'm going to discuss my decision to leave the engineering program and study independently. The reason that I've done this has many parts, but the most significant of which is the currency crisis and the debt associated with going to university. So the consensus in the university community is that going into a substantial amount of debt is worthwhile because at the end you'll get a degree and then you'll be able to make more money and pay off the debt. In previous decades this was the case, but in recent years and in upcoming years this will become less and less the case. And the reason for that is that the piece of paper called a degree that you will get will soon not be worth nearly as much. And the reason for that is our industry, which a degree is essentially a ticket for employment in the industry is unsustainable. The industry that we have today will not last very much longer, and there's a simple reason for this. The reason it's unsustainable is that we consume a lot more than we produce. We take in a lot more than we give out, and that cannot happen for a long time. Eventually the people that are producing the things are going to ask for us to give back to them. And so places like China, who are accumulating debt from the US, Canada, Britain, wherever, eventually now they're getting to the point where they're starting to ask for this stuff back, because when the US buys products for China, what they do is China ships them the products, and in return the US gives them treasury notes or currency. And since the US prints that money out of thin air, what that basically is, that's not anything of actual value, it's just out of thin air. It's essentially just an IOU. Like if someone were to give me something, I could just write on a piece of paper, IOU this, whatever it is. And so China and Saudi Arabia and Japan, they have collected all of these IOUs from the US, Canada, and so they've been stockpiling them. And now they want something in return for all of that debt that they've accumulated. They want some actual real products. And the issue is that since the US and Canada and all these other places don't produce nearly as much as we consume. Most of the stuff that we produce, we just consume ourselves. And so we have nothing to pay back our debt with. And so since we don't have the capacity to produce a substantial amount more than we consume, there's this conflict that's going to happen between the debtors and the people that loan us the money. And so this conflict is happening as we speak. The US is currently putting troops in Australia because this is a problem that's happening. And one consequence of this is that the American dollar, Canadian dollar, all these different currencies that rely on the American dollar are bound to collapse. They have to, because what will happen is that since we don't have the capacity to to pay back our debt, we will eventually have to default. And what that will mean is that China and Japan and all these other countries will give up and just say, okay, well, we're just going to sell the American debt. We're going to sell the American treasuries, and we're just going to try and get rid of this debt that we have. And they realize that when they make that decision to do that, they will crash the value of the American currency, because currency is based on market value, based on supply and demand. And so if a lot of people want to buy a currency, then the value goes up because the demand is going up. But if a lot of people want to sell a currency, then the supply goes up and the value goes down. So since China owns such a large proportion of American assets, American treasuries and all these other things, if they decide that they want to sell those, the supply skyrockets in the market and the value shoots down. And when the value starts going down, it's the exact same thing that happened with the housing bubble, is that once a few people started selling in the housing market, it scared a lot of other people. They're like, oh, the housing prices are going down. We got, like, it peaked. We got to sell right now. And so that panic caused a lot of people to start selling. And since the supply for sellers went through the roof, everyone wanted to sell. That caused the housing prices to just absolutely collapse. That's going to be the same thing. If China ever decides, wow, like, we can't, they're not going to pay us back. Like, we need to sell these treasuries. If they ever decide to do that, then it's going to scare a lot of people that own American dollars into becoming sellers as well. Because a lot of people in Europe, since they're afraid to buy the euro because it is volatile as well, they're actually investing in American dollars. And so a lot of people from Europe and Asia and whatever who were buying American dollars as an investment, they will say, oh, the American dollar's going down a lot, we have to sell our investment as well. And all of those people selling, flooding the market with sellers, will just absolutely crash the American dollar. This will cause the industry to collapse as well, because industry relies on money to have a substantial value. And when it doesn't, then the market doesn't function. It's a depression. It's happened before, but the difference is that now it's happening. There's going to be a depression in many countries because there's so much debt that's been accumulated. So, what will happen when this happens? I have no idea. It's bound to happen because it is literally impossible for the US, Canada, and all these other Western consumer countries to pay back our debt. It is literally impossible for us to do it. Plus, politicians will not cut spending. It just won't happen. It's not realistic. And so, the default is inevitable. I believe it will absolutely happen in the next 5 years. But what happens when it does happen? I really have no idea. I'm not sure. The only thing that I am sure of is that the piece of paper called a degree that you get that is a ticket for employment in the industry will not be worth nearly as much because the industry won't be functioning. The industry isn't sustainable. It won't function for very much longer. And so I don't feel like it's a good investment for me to go into a substantial amount of debt to get this piece of paper that I know won't be worth very much, or worth nothing in 10 years' time. So what I'm doing is, it's not like the degree is worth nothing, because you still have a lot of knowledge associated with that degree. The knowledge is still worth a lot. The issue is that the piece of paper becomes worth nothing. So I want to accumulate as much knowledge as possible so I can be productive in society, yet not go into a lot of debt. The only way that I can do that is by studying independently. You can learn anything on the internet. You can download textbooks. You can do all these things. It's so easy to study independently, and then you can actually be studying the things that you enjoy. Because honestly, most homework sucks. It's not fun to do. You don't learn quickly doing things that you don't like. If you're enjoying, if you're actually motivated to do what you're learning, then you're going to learn a lot quicker. And so that brings me to my next problem with why I have left university, and that is the suppression of creativity in the school system. And the teachers don't realize what they're doing, but they are actually suppressing creativity by making the flow of information only happen one way. They believe that it takes a human until its adult stage to be creative, which is complete bullshit, honestly. So many kids are creative, so many kids have great ideas, can make awesome music, and so since the flow of information only goes from the teacher to the student instead of from the teacher to the student and from the student to the teacher, it causes the students to have sort of this trapped feeling of not being able to express themselves, not being able to have like their own path, their own ideas. And I've experienced this, even though I enjoyed the science program a lot. knew that in society, the best information isn't the information that you regurgitate back to the teachers, but information that's really productive. It's information that you can gather from teachers, connect with other information, and create something new. That's how technology is created. That is how anything new, any breakthroughs, that's always how it happens. It's connection of different information to create something new. But the education system doesn't teach you how to be creative. It just teaches you how to regurgitate information back exactly the way that it was given to you, which is not productive whatsoever. So that brings me to my final and still important point of why I left university, is the stress of the workload, especially in the engineering program. We are meant to do work almost robotically. Sometimes we're given more work than we have hours in a day to complete. And this does not work well whatsoever, because one of the fundamental things about human beings is that we must live our life in moderation. If you do too much of anything, it will be bad for you. If you drink too much water, it can be bad for you. If you eat too much good food, it can still be bad for you. If you do too much of anything, it will be bad for you. It is the same thing with your schoolwork. If you do too much schoolwork, it will not be good for your mental health, and you will not learn quicker. It's just the way it is. So we have to have balance in our lives, and that is not enforced by the school system. It is actually discouraged by the school system to have balance. Well, I can't say for all the programs, but especially the engineering program is like that. So what I've decided to do is come home. I'm making a bit of money babysitting and shoveling driveways and things like that, but the way that I want to make money soon is designing web pages. And so from there, I can be continuously learning all the time, and eventually I want to have enough knowledge that I could be productive and work for an organization like Engineers Without Borders or something like that. So I've downloaded a bunch of textbooks online, and I'm constantly reading the textbooks, watching videos online, watching documentaries, doing all these things. And I've created a schedule for myself so that I have some kind of routine that I can follow. It basically just involves meditation first, then exercising, and then studying, and then practicing designing web pages, and then I have some leisure time at the end of the day that I can just do what I want with, maybe watch some TED videos or play video games or whatever keeps me interested. And so what I recommend for other people that feel the same way that I do about the school system and want to find another option, I'm only able to do this because my parents can support me for now. I don't expect them to support me for years to come, but I need that, or this would not be possible. So if you do have that option, it is a good option to study independently, because I have experienced over the last few days, I have been learning much quicker than I normally would at school, because I am actually enjoying what I'm doing. So I encourage you to strive for independence, strive for creativity, and if you do that, you will be successful. You will gain confidence. And no matter what happens in the economy, no matter what happens with any of the decisions that other people make, if you become independent and start making your own decisions and have your own knowledge base, then whatever the situation that comes around, you will have the knowledge to be able to deal with the situation as it comes to you. Thank you for listening.